every good game must have at least one perfect sound. The sound of satisfaction. And in Path of Exile, I believe that sound is the sound when enemies shatter. We freeze and then we explode. So, what is this build? Actually, it is nothing new, but I'm using new unique armor. And you may have seen crit version of this build. So why non-crit? Simply because it may be a bit cheaper. This build is not cheap. It will cost you couple hundred hairs. So this is not good for League start. First, let me explain how this works. For this to work, you need high chance to shock and freeze. You can easily get 70% shock and freeze. And then to start chain reaction, you need to freeze and shock one enemy, and when it dies, Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice are triggered. And then you just run. Herald of Thunder will keep striking enemies, which will get frozen, and when we die we will explode because of Herald of Ice. And Herald of Ice will shock enemies, triggering Herald of Thunder, and this cycle will continue. This build has its own drawbacks, but also has advantages. Maybe I'll start with advantages. Besides that satisfying sound of enemy shattering, this build also has pretty good clear speed. You basically kill as fast as you can run. Also, most of the time you freeze enemies and frozen enemies cannot damage you. Like in this example, I am able to freeze Peninsula boss, but only because I am proliferating freezes from weaker enemies and applying it to the boss. So allies cannot die is actually good for you in this case. Freezes do give a lot of safety. Porcupines do not release their spikes, crabs only die once, and so on. This is also a good farming build. That is, of course, if you like walking simulator builds. Maybe I should call this build walking simulator. Now let's talk about drawbacks. First of all, it is expensive and not good for League start, and probably not good for new players. Killing bosses is kind of bad, very bad, but not always. If you want to make this even stronger, you're gonna need to invest even more. So the price can go over 400 hairs, depending on economy. It is not very tanky. It also may have a bit of mana problems. Now, my items and skills. Before I move on, I should say that this build is kind of finished, but can be improved a lot more. And this happens to me all the time, but I just got bored of it. I have no purpose. Made a build, saw the results, saw potential, and I lost interest. So just keep in mind that you can improve this build a lot. But probably don't even start this build if you don't have couple hundred hairs laying around. Shut up and show items already. First, chest piece, the Coming of Calamity. This unique armor makes that your heralds always reserve 45% of your mana, or even life if you're using blood magic. Why is it good? Because you can even 6-link your heralds and they will still reserve only 45% of your mana. I mean each herald. So 2 heralds will reserve 90% of your mana. In my chest piece I'm using Herald of Thunder linked with added cold damage, elemental proliferation, ice bite, and added lightning damage. It is important to understand that your Herald of Thunder must be able to freeze and basically do a lot of damage. If it cannot freeze, it will not trigger Herald of Ice. I will also explain another important thing about Heralds after I talk about items. The most expensive item in my build are these unique boots, Abberath Hooves. We have a special skill, Abberath Fury. When you are running, it does small AoE damage around you. And this item is a big help for your auto heralds. But I would say it is not mandatory. I'm using it to automate things even more, because I link Curse on Hit, Elemental Weakness, added cold damage and added lightning damage. Well, Control Destruction would be stronger, I guess. So when I'm running, I do damage, apply Curse, apply Shocks and Freezes, which helps to chain auto heralds. Oh, by the way, it also triggers Elemental Overload. That is, of course, if I do not kill enemies before I reach them. Next item, Call of the Brotherhood. Gives some damage, regen, and converts 40% of your lightning damage into cold, and also makes it very easy to shock frozen enemies. I am not entirely sure if my gems are correct because of this item. Maybe someone who played similar build can correct me? Anyway, next unique item is Southbound gloves. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but they give quite a lot of maximum life, some cold, and also increases Herald of Ice damage by 50%. And I just realized why I was having some problems killing some enemies. Because your hits can only kill frozen enemies, but you can always ignite enemies by running on them or let your golems kill them. Links in gloves, Herald of Ice, Elemental Proliferation, added lightning damage, and Innervate. Weapon of choice, the Dark Seer. It does not give as much damage as Doryani's Catalyst, but it gives a lot of life and energy shield. But if you can afford, of course, use Doryani's Catalyst. Next, helmet. Some whatever helmet. But if you can afford, there is new unique, the Tempests Binding. That helmet is so good, but it is also very expensive. As of now, the cheapest one is 340 chaos. Woo. That helmet is basically a 6 link, level 80 Ice Bite and level 80 Innervate, decent life and resistances. So most likely you would socket Herald of Ice, linked with added cold damage, added lighting damage and elemental proliferation. My links in the helmet are Storm Burst, cast while channeling, Ball Lighting and GMP. Remember, this build might have mana problems, so cast while channeling is good solution, and this works pretty well. The rest of my items belt could be upgraded. Shield could also be upgraded, amulet must be upgraded, and the last ring as well. By the way, I am also using cast when damage taken with Immortal Call and Molten Shell. Also very important Decoy Totem, Flame Dash and Flame Golem. Atziri's Promise Flask gives some damage and some leech, and I'm not entirely sure about this Worm Flask. It is supposed to help trigger Herald of Thunder, but very often my golems kill them before I kill them. It is probably not very useful. I would instead carry Mana Flask, because you will need mana, unless you find a way to sustain your mana during boss fights. Before I talk about passive skill tree, I need to explain important thing about Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice. Here is the biggest drawback. They are not spells. They do not have spell tag. That means their damage is not affected by spell damage. Also, added elemental damage to spells does not give damage to heralds. So you may be thinking, oh, I could use Essence Worm Ring and socket Anger and get more damage. Nope, you cannot. Anger only gives damage to attacks and spells, and this is not spell, it is secondary effect. Same for support gems. Something like Control Destruction would not affect heralds. So your heralds basically can be supported by added cold, added lighting damage, Innervate and Ice Bite, and elemental proliferation. Or if you are doing a crit build, then of course crit support gems. So just remember, if something gives spell damage, it is not useful for you. But if it gives elemental damage, then it is useful for you. Now let's talk passive skill tree. As always, I'm not saying that this is how you should build. There are other ways to build it, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I picked the right Ascendancy class. You may be considering Berserker for more damage and leech, or maybe Witch Elementalist for free elemental proliferation, but my choice was Scion. And at first I picked Elementalist to get reflect damage reduction and some elemental resistance penetration. And then I picked Raider for more movement speed, of course Frenzy Charge generation, which also gives Onslaught, which increases my movement speed even more. By the way, remember that Ice Bite benefits from Frenzy Charges. Then I went through spell damage nodes, picked Jewel slot, more movement speed, another Jewel slot, then moved to the crossroad and went to the left, from which I picked life nodes, then EOE nodes, and then moved left to the Templar. I picked more life, Jewel slot, then left to get more life, elemental damage, more life, more elemental damage, another Jewel slot. Of course, I picked elemental overload, and then moved up to get more life, shock, freeze, another Jewel slot, then moved to the shadow to get some life, another freeze nodes, and now lastly I am moving down to get more life, elemental damage, and probably more elemental damage. For Uberlab, I would suggest you to pick Path of Ranger to get free passive skill points. For jewels, always try to get these mods: damage, cold damage, and the rest is up to you, either life, or maybe freeze, or maybe area damage, or whatever you can get. As for bandit rewards, it is up to you, but I probably did a mistake and picked Kraken to get more movement speed. It probably would be better to help Alira to get more mana regen and resistances, or just kill them all and get 2 passive skill points. In video description you'll find the link to my passive skill tree and import code for path of building. And that is basically all about this build. I am already planning another build, and I don't really have much desire to play this build anymore. Last 2 things I want to talk about. First is that I am now doing streams. I have tried doing streams on YouTube and on Twitch, and I can't really decide if I should stream on YouTube or on Twitch. I don't really like uploading short videos just to let you know that I'm streaming on Twitch, but all the streamer community is on Twitch. However, YouTube works faster for me, and if you like watching streams while playing the game, YouTube also is better, at least from my experience. So for now, I will try to continue streaming on Twitch. I will put the link in the video description, but later on I might just start streaming on YouTube all the time. By the way, I'm not sure how interesting it is to watch me play the game and mostly talk to myself, or just try to talk at all. But if you don't really have anything better to do, then feel free to hop in and chat with me and talk about game or just life. I am mostly doing this just to improve my English. If you catch me on stream, you will see how hard it is for me to talk live. So yeah. And last thing, I will be changing outro for all future videos. When I was making that 3D wolf back then, I did not realize how much problem it could cause me. So for now it will be only patrons' names, but I will make something cooler later on. So thank you for watching and see you later, or in stream.
Subscribe.